What do you think is the biggest of the injustices that you have listed out? You've listed out eight of them particularly, but what, according to you, is the biggest of them all?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Shivani, for having me. It's really always a pleasure to be speaking with you. And thank you so much for your wishes for the book. Yes, it is doing spectacularly well. To be honest, I didn't really expect it to do so well. I think it's kind of struck a chord with a lot of people, particularly the younger generation, possibly because of its size. No one reads War and Peace shaped books anymore, I suppose. No, but to very quickly answer your question before we come to the other specific of the book, I think the last the last reason that I give, which is the Places of Worship Act. I think that hurts me the most because, as I've talked in that chapter as well, I've often wondered what is the difference between civilization and an empire. Why do empires vanish and they don't exist anymore, most of them, but civilizations don't? And I think the reason for that, I suppose, it can be a very subjective reasoning. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it is for us to ask for the historical injustices to be corrected, justice for our ancestors, because that is what maintains continuity. It's almost, as I mentioned, it's like memory. It keeps getting passed on until it is realized. And the terrible hardships and almost near annihilation that our ancestors went through this wave of invasions that happened, and tens of thousands of temples that were destroyed. And if you read Dr. Meenakshi Jain's authoritative and scholarly works on this, that how bit by bit, little by little, they actually, hid the idols in wells, under houses to protect them. And then when the invasions passed away or passed on, then they, brought those things again. So they've kept this flame of our culture and civilization alive. And if our present generation cannot deliver justice to them, I think that's the most cruel thing. So yes, there is discrimination institutionalized in the other seven things as well, but this one hurts the most because this actually prevents any law-abiding Hindu to, in fact, even approach the courts to seek for justice. And how can that be allowed in a democracy? Is something that is beyond cruelty for me. Yeah.
Anand, I've always found it very fascinating. You look at the global left, and all over the world, they support the movement for reclamation, even reparation.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the left opposes Hindu reclamation in India. Why do you think that dichotomy exists?
Yes, in fact, I talk about it. The left even supports illegal or the structures that were built upon, other things, or the statues and the glorification of the so-called conquistadors and, Pizarro and imperialists to be brought down illegally. I mean, recently in Belgium, the statue of King Leopold was brought down illegally and the West cheered it. Of course, he was the butcher of Congo. But out here, they eulogize and worship Aurangzeb and Tipu, and so I find it very difficult to pin down just one reason why they do it. The most overwhelming reason for me is their love for jihadism or global Muslim brotherhood, whatever you may call it. But at the heart of it is actually hatred for Hinduism. And you've seen in the past week how one small spark has been lit by people who want to eradicate Sanatan Dharma. So, this is not something that people said 50 years ago, Shivani. They did. I mean, Periyar did. But this is an ongoing process. This need and this striving to eradicate Hinduism is manifested in, the support for anything or anyone that can demolish not only Hinduism philosophically through books. Burning of Nalanda, as I explained, has been cushioned away by saying that it was actually done by a couple of Hindu beggars and not by Khilji. So, in every aspect of how Hinduism manifests itself, they want to destroy.
The other question I want to ask you is that why is it that it is liberal and progressive to suggest that Hindus must always either contain themselves or give up certain of their natural rights purely because they are larger in number? Because, as you enlist in your book, all the historical reasons some of them can be accused of the left. But as you very rightly talk about in your book, we've had 10 years of what is referred to as a Hindu nationalist government by a Hindu nationalist party, and yet a lot of these historical injustices haven't been overturned. What I don't understand is that why is the Hindu population so okay with this? And why is it that the burden of numbers, of being larger in numbers, is so great on Hindus in India?
So there are a couple of historical reasons for this, Shivani. First of all, when you say that even though we've had 10 years of supposedly Hindu government, and quite a lot of these historical injustices still remain, I slightly correct you. Each one of those remains. So this government is exactly the same as any other government. They haven't really worked on this. It's just that there is a feel-good factor for Hindus, I suppose, that we have Narendra Modi and so-called Hindu Hriday Samrat at the helm. But if push comes down to shove, I don't think they've actually done even the same as Congress, if not more. Uh, but the question that you asked, a lot of it has to do with guilt tripping of a majority. Now, this happens, this is a very natural process. The minorities, they many times, I might be, using a very rough phrase for it, but they play the victimhood card, which is to be expected because they're the minority. And it happens in most countries. In India, it happens. But I think if you go not just to a lot back, but just 70, 80 years back at the birth of the modern republic, and I start by, in fact, it's on the first page. The gauntlet was thrown by none other than Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah.
When he said, in order to quell this kind of Hindu-Muslim acrimony, he said, I wouldn't mind if all the Hindus were to be killed by Muslims. And at the end of the day, if a new dawn would bring this kind of, this kind of new Raj, that would usher in a golden age or something of that sort. So when the father of the nation says something like that, what follows is amazing sense of, guilt tripping is just one word for it. Self-loathing is another. And we've been brought up on it. And if you look at traditionally what actually happened, Congress ceded the space of education, writing books, and how to quote unquote brainwash people completely to the left. I mean, Nurul Hasan and all those people. So when all our textbooks that are risen that were written for the last 70 years have glorified and wanted the death of Hinduism, have glorified invaders, have glorified Aurangzeb, butchers, what else do you expect? We've been brainwashed to such an extent that where it's now almost terminal, and it's almost blasphemous to think that Hindus should be given these rights. I mean, I've got people who come to me and have said that I really wasn't aware as to some of the reasons that you've told in this, but do we really need to fight for these rights? So there are Hindus who are not even aware that these rights should belong to every human being, not just Hindus.